Hello everyone, I am Alyssa Mialene and I am a reporter at Devex. I am here in beautiful Davos with Bernhard Kowatsch. He is the head of World Food Programme's Innovation Accelerator. And I'm lucky enough to be able to talk to him about the work he does, why he's here at Davos, and the intersection between artificial intelligence, innovation, and ending world hunger.
Great to speak with you.
Thanks so much for being here. So let's get started. For those that don't know about the Innovation Accelerator, tell us a bit about the work that you do, Bernhard.
So, if people know about the World Food Programme, we are here to end global hunger and also in emergency response. Like you will see us in a lot of emergency settings, whether it's in Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan. Now, the Innovation Accelerator of the World Food Programme is essentially starting there. How can we find these transformative innovations and startups that can help us make emergency response more efficient and effective? And at the same time find these types of innovations, these breakthroughs that can help us sustainably end hunger. And by now we not only do this for the World Food Programme, but we actually run a total of 18 different social impact accelerator programs for partners like Google, the German government, the Kofi Annan Foundation, Gates Foundation, actually a multitude of partners, including climate adaptation for the Adaptation Fund.
Now, I do want to talk a little bit about you, Bernhard, because you started this journey. What, 10 years ago, right?
Almost 10 years ago, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, tell me a little bit about how innovation has changed, how the landscape has changed in those last 10 years.
So when we first started our journey as Innovation Accelerator for the World Food Programme, this was a bit of a crazy idea to say like, okay, you know, we know that accelerators, innovation work in private sector. You see it all around, like you see artificial intelligence, you see like solutions that change people's lives. Why can't we use this not just in pilots, but at scale for humanitarian response and development cooperation? And I think what has happened since then is like, not only have we as Innovation Accelerator proven that it actually works, but it also has become a lot more widespread. So I think there is now recognition that, you know, if you invest $1 into innovation, you'll multiply the impact of the dollar that you actually put into that. And I think that's really reassuring also if you think about like some of the goals like ending global hunger. Unfortunately, the last 8 years we are going in the wrong direction, which means like if we're serious about ending hunger, like one of the levers for sure, I believe, will be innovation.
Okay. Break that down for me. What types of programs does the Innovation Accelerator work on? Tell me about some of the impact that you've had.
So typically the way we work is like a global accelerator program. So we look for the best innovations globally. So it's like for-profit startups, non-profit innovations, could be companies, but also internal innovations of the World Food Programme. We then train them in a one-week program. At a pitch event, we then have them exposed, like, you know, present to like government representatives, investors, private sector executives. And then we actually develop these innovations or help them scale locally. So it's about like the local implementation and scaling them. So at the World Food Programme, because we are active in 120 countries and territories, this is what our secret superpower is, because it's not just while, you know, the accelerator, we do the support, we work with our local teams, and they are the ones that also like connect them to like government, the local communities, partners, and global partners themselves. And you know, just talking about like two specific examples. One that I want to mention is like recently we worked on an AI innovation we call Scout that optimizes supply chain optimization with machine learning. And that's really exciting for us because it's not only showing that it works, but you can also already see the benefits, like, you know, after a couple of months of first pilots. And the other example that I want to mention is like a startup called Ignitia. They use AI, satellite imagery, to provide weather-related alerts, but also farming advice for rural communities in Africa. And you know, these are the types of solutions that, you know, sometimes they may exist without us, but we help them scale. And sometimes we are the ones that actually find them the first time and then really like set them off on a journey to have, you know, more impact for the people we serve.
Tell me a little bit more about those programs. In particular, I think we have a lot of readers in our community that focus on agriculture, focus on rural communities, rural farming. How does this really work, say, for, you know, a farmer in the middle of Tanzania where access might be difficult? for example?
Yeah, so let me talk about Ignitia for a little bit. Like, so Ignitia, it's a social business.
Okay.
And so what they actually have built, like they've built weather models based on satellite data and artificial intelligence, and they train the data specifically for rural parts of Africa, where global models are usually not that well equipped to actually do this, because they've not been trained specifically on that. Now, what's exciting about Ignitia is, well, they actually have paying smallholder farmers, so they not only prove that, how do we prove that a startup works? It creates value. How do we know that it creates value? Well, the customers, in this case, the smallholder farmers, they actually pay for the service because they see the value. And what's exciting, so Ignitia, they offer like for instance, like storm is coming, or like harvest now, like kind of farming advice to smaller farmers, kind of precision agriculture, but like in rural communities. And even if the farmers don't have a smartphone, they can just get text by feature phone, and if they don't read and write, they get symbols. And so this is where it is really interesting about how AI and the smart business model locally combined can actually bring, also people that otherwise would be disconnected from this type of information to the digital era, really.
I think that's a really important point. It's something I've been curious about because Davos, more than I realized, there are a lot of global development intersections, right? We see, a number of different actors kind of with their slogans and different types of things. So trying to get business leaders into the room to talk about things like AI, but from a development lens. But to me, I was thinking, okay, but how do communities access this?
Yeah.
But I guess this starts to get at some of that, right? And makes me feel a little bit more optimistic that is possible to bridge that digital gap or digital divide.
Absolutely, and I think the other aspect is, like, sometimes you may not see that artificial intelligence is being used, but you still benefit of it. So the example I was giving earlier on supply chain optimization. I mean, at the World Food Programme, there's a lot of emphasis on efficiency and effectiveness in our operations. Now, last year we estimated up to $300 million of efficiency gains have been reaped just across everything from different initiatives, innovations, and different aspects like that. But what I was mentioning before, like the Scout supply chain optimization tool that we've been helping build with our supply chain team, that is an interesting one, because they said, well, we've been optimizing supply chain for decades as World Food Programme. However, what now is possible with AI, we can combine vast data sets and also volatile information to say, well, a supply chain officer that's now replanning, you can use, for instance, the information of market prices, market price fluctuations, forecast of market prices, locations of warehouses, where to buy. As World Food Programme, we have more than 10,000 different vendors that actually sell commodities to us. So if you think about that, that is very complex, where it's not just about a single tool. And so what this Scout AI tool actually is doing is combines this data from different data sources, and by doing this, just in the first implementation across West Africa, and this was for a standard replenishment of sorghum stock levels in different warehouses, we've been able to show across West Africa that last year we realized savings of $2 million alone, just one commodity in West Africa. Now, and this is an exciting example. So people may not even know that you're actually using AI somewhere or machine learning, but it's something that you can now use and you can optimize and actually leverage the benefits.
Yeah. And you brought up an important point, which is cost, right?
Yes.
I mean, the World Food Programme is facing a funding shortfall, but so is, frankly, the development world. I mean, we are, as an American who typically covers DC, we're bracing for foreign aid cuts with the new Trump administration. European Union and across Europe has seen likely cuts last year and this year. So kind of getting at that, how AI can reduce cost is probably going to be even more important in the years to come.
Absolutely, and professionalizing everything from management structures, being efficient in what we do, and also looking forward into what has never been possible. One of the big areas that we also look at for the World Food Programme, for instance, is what we call innovative finance, working with private investors, using loans for SME funding, using loans for startup funding, and we're even working on a catastrophe bond right now together with the World Bank, and I think this is where it starts to get really interesting to say, okay, how can we use other financial models? And we've been doing this also for a longer period of time. Parametric insurance, insurance for smallholder farmers, like that helps in case there is a irregular rainfall pattern or whatever it actually is.
Right.
And I think these are the types of models that also increase the pie of like available funding beyond like traditional government funding.
A catastrophe bond.
Yes.
Fascinating. Are you heading around town to kind of pitch these types of innovative models today? And are you getting pickup, if so, from business leaders in the space?
Well, actually, absolutely. So like this is where, why is the World Food Program here? Is like we need to get the word out, not only about like the global hunger crisis that is real, also about the funding needs that we as an organization have. And like this is something that is real, where people are suffering. We need to make sure that as an organization we are able to serve those people that are in need. And at the same time, we can show a message of hope. A lot of the innovation work that we are working on, it's not just small pilots, but already happening at scale. And like this is something that I'm personally really excited about, because typically when you're a venture capitalist, they would say like, is the value of a company increasing? Now, we don't care as much about like values of companies. All we care about is, do they help people and do they scale? And so one of the proxies we typically look at is like, how many people do they reach? Like how many lives have been positively impacted? So our portfolio last year reached over 60 million people, and they raised a total of $295 million of grant funding, in addition to what we gave them. So we may have only supported some of these startups with like $100,000, and then they go on and raise $4 or $5 million from regular donors, foundations, and so on, to make sure that this is actually happening. And like, we also, as World Food Program Innovation Accelerator, we are funded by government. So it's Germany, the U.S. government, Austria, Luxembourg, France, Denmark, different other governments that are actually supporting us right now, and then private sector companies like John Deere, Google, or the Gates Foundation. So like this is where it is very interesting to actually look into, like, we need to not only look at what we do, but also at the impact that we create, right?
Right. Now, for those watching who perhaps want to get into innovation, AI, different kind of tech innovation, so to speak, but perhaps don't have an innovation accelerator team, what is your advice to them in terms of, one, let's say trends to watch, and where they can get involved?
So I think the first step is always like to actually reach out and like see what's already out there. As a WFP Innovation Accelerator, we share a lot on social media, on our websites, on blogs, specifically from the view of like we want to share the knowledge with as many people we can. And this is about like tech trends, but also like, actually how do you support innovations in the sphere? Like how do you actually make it happen in terms of like localized community work, working on innovations and helping these innovations scale. So actually checking what's already out there is probably like step number one.
Okay.
Step number two, there's a multitude of also offerings that's out there. So like, which is, and this is interesting. So as I was saying earlier, like we run 18 different impact accelerators right now as World Food Program, specifically for the reason because I believe there's a lot more need and potential to do that, and because we're running so many of them, we're a lot more efficient and effective in doing that than if you're actually starting from scratch. But it's, like if people want to do more, it really starts typically with at least a person that as part of their job has an official mandate or profile for like they look after innovation. That typically helps a lot, even in terms of freeing up some capacity in the mind space. The other aspect is definitely, and that's a challenge that we have in the humanitarian development system, is like, how do you fund these types of things? So oftentimes that means you need dedicated funding for these types of innovations, unless you're lucky that you actually are able to do that. And to do this for the right reasons, like this is where I would advocate for, not every approach is fit for every organization. So if you're very operationally focused, you probably should be thinking about what the needs of the organization are, like what really helps achieve the objectives of the organization. and you will have to learn. Like it doesn't matter like how you start, you will learn along the way. So we also apply the same principles we do for innovation for ourselves, and like we continue to evolve and learn.
Fair enough. Now, I also don't want to paint a too rosy picture, or too rosy of a picture about AI, about innovation.
Yep.
And I'd love to talk to you a little bit, Bernhard, about some of the risks, right? What are some of the risks when you put AI specifically, let's take, into the development space or into the humanitarian space? And how do we watch for those risks or monitor those risks or track those risks as we do our work?
Yeah, no, and there's definitely a big movement, and like we also advocate for responsible AI in a lot of places. Like now some basic things with artificial intelligence remain the same as they do for any innovation, like making sure that you solve a real problem, making sure that the solution you're having is something that can scale, and like you're it's something that actually is not only a match for because you had the technology solution but solves the real problem. So like that is a principle that should be there. You also shouldn't be putting people at risk or like thinking about but this is universal. It doesn't depend on AI. It's just that sometimes I think it gets underestimated, like generally in the innovation space, that with innovation, yes, you need to think about like what could be negative consequences of these types of approaches that you're taking. And if you're doing testing, like how can you co-develop with the communities or the people that are actually the users or that are affected with these types of solutions? Now, specifically with AI, there is something that it's important, and it's something that definitely I advocate for as well, is like, how do we ensure that more people get involved? And this is not just talking about like, geographic representation in AI. It's also about like how many women work in AI. Do people like, and this is just on like who is actually working on these types of model. It's also about like if models are being trained, what data is being used, is what's considered an edge case, so like something that's like very small, actually the core of a particular community, and therefore the AI doesn't work and has systemic changes or challenges. So that's an issue. And at the same time, on the flip side, I would argue that we also shouldn't demonize AI as like because if we're serious about like the type of work that the humanitarian development space does, we should be using the best technology possible. We should be using the best tools possible to be most cost effective and efficient.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Bernhard, I just want to thank you so much for making the time in this busy week on Monday morning for us and for Devex. Good luck.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope you'll find another couple of like exciting AI startups, innovations, and then maybe we can amplify them further.
Let's see what we find.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank
and thank
you
you everyone for watching.